I started hauling sheaves with my cousin, Peter Bruin. Two of us to one hay rack. Usually each one had his own hay rack. But we were too young yet to drive horses and all that, you know. So two of us worked together, putting 14 days together. And at that time, they were good years. I enjoyed them very much. It was hard work, but there's something about it that I'll never forget. You learn lots working with different people, people that I never knew before. And they, like Lenny Popov, he'd have different people from coming out, different parts of Saskatchewan working for him. So I worked together with them, and I think the best times of literally was the meals that we were served. Dinner meals, breakfast also. And one particular instance, I might have been my second year. I used to get so tired during the end of the day, and the men that worked with me, or I worked with them, they were kind of practical guys, and maybe like to play tricks on the person. Anyways, we were trashing over at our neighbors, and I was sleeping up on the hayloft with the other guys, but they got up early, fed my horses, watered the horses, harnessed them for me even, you know. I was ready to go. But this one time I slept in, and I had to come down from the hayloft, down a ladder, so I was kind of embarrassed and didn't realize it that I just took a run at the door and stepped down on the ladder to climb down, and the ladder wasn't there. And that's a good jump, about 10 feet down. So about sleeping in and then coming down with a crash, you know. It wasn't very nice of them to do it, you know. But I survived it, you know. But getting back to the meals, they were tremendous. Plain Prairie, you know, just vareniki Prairie and good tomato sandwiches. Everything was good. Why they were good? Because we were hungry. That they really served the purpose of enjoying your food properly. And after noon meals, lunches they call them, they bring up a cream can full of coffee and a big box of sandwiches. Eat all you could eat. But you had to eat in a hurry because the fieldman or this spike preacher, while you're having lunch, he'd take over pitching the sheaves off, you load those sheaves to the machine. So we had to eat real fast not to hold up the lineup. So that was good. Different families, different places. There was a couple of places that the meals were kind of meager. They didn't realize how many people there are and how hungry they get, you know. So you had to kind of beat the next guy behind you to eat as much as you could and have a good feed. Anyways, that was a nice part of the life, enjoyable life. Stroking those sheaves, and if I'd rate that the least enjoying part of life, harvest time. Putting those sheaves up, stacking, stroking them, and stroke after stroke, literally felt like millions of strokes. But there weren't that many, you know. when we come in to the field from the field for meals, it is customary just to have a pail of water there, and anyone that wanted to drink water, they just took a simple dipper and dipped in to the pail, had a drink, and to save the water, because the water had to be possibly carried in from the well. So each one had a drink of water. If anything was left in the dipper, we just put it back in the water pail.
When I was growing up on the farm with my mom and dad, I saw how hard my dad used to work on the farm, so I thought I would never marry a farmer. I didn't want to work so hard, I didn't want my husband to work so hard, and I didn't think anything about kids at that time, but I just thought it just didn't seem that I was going to marry a farmer. But what did I do? I married a farmer and never regretted it. I didn't fall in love with a farmer right from the beginning when I was just a teenager, but somehow gradually fell in love with this particular farmer called Bill Kardash. Is that okay?
During the years, I kept in touch with Agatha, and she entered her teaching years, studies first in Saskatchewan, so those meetings were very scarce in summertime, because she was away from home for the whole summer. But eventually things worked out very good. And, well, let's say I was successful in drawing her attention and keeping her friendship.
For our honeymoon, we got married and we needed a new farm truck. So we got a new truck, farm truck, half-ton, and we decided, well, of course I guess it was Bill that decided, that we'd go on a trip on that new truck, go to Banff. So we went to Banff, got a tarp, which we put over the top of the cab. That's where we slept, just like in a tent. But and it was we found it very comfortable in there. We took a mattress and some food and stuff, and we went to Banff.
Agatha and I, we lived rather from the income from the farm, milked the cows, shipped the cream, and a few other things. We did raise chickens on the side, and one time we even tried to go into the turkey business. And we raised 200 turkeys. Well, to sell the turkeys at that time, there was nobody really to do it, so I'd load up the car with turkeys, dressed turkeys already, and sell them from house to house or to a storekeeper. Made a few dollars and kept on going financially. It was kind of tight going, so in 1958 I decided to try to work in the city for the winter, and moved to the city. We stayed there with my mom, and the pay wasn't very much. It was something like $5 a day. Or no, possibly it was $5 an hour, yeah. Anyways, we worked there, or I worked there, and at that stage, Ernie and Sharon were growing up into their childhood days, and Ernie had started school, and being in contact with some of the kids around the school, he mentioned himself that one of the boys would lift a chocolate bar or two to snitch at the store. And that was a lesson to us, being careful what kids Sharon and Ernie associated with. And they also didn't like the city life. They wanted to get back to the farm.
We started farming, and we lived together with Mom and Dad Cardish for about 3 years, and we worked together, and we enjoyed each other's company. When the children started coming, Mom helped a lot in helping with feeding and changing diapers and doing the gardening and things like that. And I appreciated all that very much. And anyway, as we kept on farming, when we got married, after a year and a half, our first baby was born, Ernie. And he had a lot of tender, loving care from the grandparents and from us and from whoever else was there. We just loved that little boy. So anyway, we still kept on growing a garden. Mom helped with the garden, we still did that. And then after almost 2 years, our Sharon was born. And Mom and Dad were still with us at that time. But Dad was getting sick, so after a while, they moved to Saskatchewan because they had to be close to the doctors. But we got a lot of help from them anyway, as much as we could. As much as they were able to give, not as much as we could get, but what they were able to do. So we appreciated that. But then, when Sharon was about a year and a half or something, Dad died. So that's her grandpa. So we so that was a sad part of our life that came at that time. And then we just continued doing our farming, whatever we could do. And Mom used to come out whenever possible. She'd help at harvest time or gardening, and
we were expecting another baby, and we stayed in the city at that year because it wasn't that convenient to travel to the city to visit the doctor during winter time. There's just no means. I had to take a train all the way around, and that was very inconvenient. Or we did travel once or twice by snowmobile. It was a purpose of a car or a taxi, which would take up to 8 or 10 passengers. And we'd catch a ride to Saskatchewan across the fields with that machine. It made no difference, road or whatever, they were able to travel fairly easily across the country. So baby was coming along, and we stayed for the convenience of being close to the hospital. So the time came for the baby to be born. I took Agatha to the hospital, left her there, went back home, and within 4 or 5 hours I come back to see how she's doing, and there was a baby, Sharon. I was rather embarrassed that I wasn't there to be at that. Of course, they never let the dad be present when the baby was being born until later on in life. But those men stayed out until the whole event was over. And then, of course, I come in and I just overwhelmed to see Sharon as a baby. It was wonderful.
When we were harvesting, especially when the kids were growing up, our children, and we were harvesting, and they would come out there in the field with some lunch or whatever. We used to take out lunch into the field and have lunch without coming home for dinner, because when we did some field work, harvesting especially, there were only 2 of us, and if we had a hired man, well, that was later on. But a lot of times there were only 2 of us, so we always had a picnic, which we liked very much. And then when the children grew up, Ernie started to help on the farm too. He was just about 12 years old or something. He learned how to drive the truck already. So things like that, that was all exciting to us.
I worked 1 year with a team of mules, all in sheep. Well, that was somebody provided the team and the mules. Well, those animals were intelligent. They knew their time. Well, by the second, 12 o'clock come in, 1 minute to 12. You couldn't get them to go in the field, they just turned around and head for home. They just wouldn't listen at all. They were faithful horses who worked, strong and willing to work. But timekeepers, they were perfection. I worked with horses, and they were good, faithful horses. One horse in particular, I know, must have died from colic or whatever it was, and I had to dig the hole for that horse. To bury a horse, you gotta dig a big hole, That was my favorite horse. But I had to do it, and it just a matter of it took me a couple of days to do it. One horse in particular was one smart one. I used to catch him and ride him around the yard. Nothing, you can't steer them or anything. I had no bridle on them. I just climbed on the horse, put my hand on the neck, which way I pushed them, and they turned that way, the left or right. They obeyed all commands. But this one horse got fed up with me. They didn't want me on the back anymore. And there's a barn with the beam sticking out, and, about 8 feet high. Someone's there. And the horse sized it up pretty good. All at once the horse just veered off the path where I steered it and hid right underneath the beam to sweep me off the back of the... Tried it once. Second time I ducked, and just the second time the horse had come a little quicker. So I just reached out and grabbed the beam. The horse kept running and I was hanging on the beam there by hand. Like I said, the horse was one smart horse. He figured it out for itself. Here's a good way to get rid of me. I'm going to bring the cows home for milking. For some reason the parents were gone. I had to pick up the horses, the cattle I mean, to bring them home for milking. And I just jumped on the horse without, just the horse knew which way I had to go. I just touched the horse and they turned that way. And come around down the road, around the bush. And there was a dog there, strange dog running there. And the horse shied away and threw me off. Then I hit the ground pretty bad. The ground was frozen already. And I think actually from that time on, I had trouble with my hip. I hurt my hip bad enough. I fractured the cartilage and started wearing out. So that's the cause of all my troubles with my hip. Another time, it's kind of a interesting instinct of the horses. It was New Year's Eve. We had a school teacher, a girl, teaching in our school, Greystones. So I made a date with her on New Year's Eve. I come along with a cutter, open sleigh actually, and picked her up on sleigh and went to Blaine Lake. After the dance, coming home, we cuddled up under the blanket after midnight, cold, and we cuddled up under the blanket. I just let the horses have their own way. And those horses knew where I lived, but they had the sense to go out down the road, the path where I picked up the girl, you know. We're driving and driving, all at once they stopped. Uncovered, and there we were standing right in front of the teacher's where she was teaching, where she was staying, you know. Now, a horse to do that, you know, just allowing them the freedom, and they knew which way to go. They didn't head straight for home, but they went the roundabout way to teach to drop my passenger off. And then I took him home after that, you know. I used to do the plowing in the springtime, and our land is rocky, lots of rock in there. So once you hit a patch of rock, it pitches you off the plow, hitting the rock, jarring you, throwing you off, which I got thrown off more than once. Or have to steer the horses. And they come to that particular spot. They're going up and down the field, and as soon as they hit that spot, they slow right down. So when they hit the rock, it just eases. The plow just slides over the rock instead of hitting bang and throwing off. As soon as you pass the place, the horse is picked up and keep on going to the end of the row of the field. You don't have to steer them, they turn themselves. Turn around, make a U-turn, and head back the other way. And exactly on the same path. Say you're following with the drill, the track by the wheel, made last time, and they'll hit that track coming back identical. They knew exactly where it was. They could see, they can't see to the back, but they know in the front what's coming up, and they make the U-turn. Used to haul grain in winter time, wagon box, and winter time was cold. Driving home, you couldn't control the horses. They were so anxious to get home. They just go home on the gallop all the way home. And that was also horses seeing a sense of knowledge, how well they, if some of the runners would slide off the track and hit the heavy snow, and the horse would stop and then pull over to the opposite side, pull you out of the ditch, and then keep going again. You didn't even have to steer them to do that. My time working with cattle was enjoyable. I enjoyed the most going to the pasture early in the morning and coming early in the morning, 5 o'clock I was there, and I blow the horn once I entered the pasture. I always carried a couple of bales of hay with myself, and the cows had learned that when they come out to meet me, I'd always give them a treat of hay. So I enjoyed that, coming up to the riverbank, blowing the horn, and they knew it was me. I arrived at the pasture, and they came filing out from the riverbank all the way up, surrounding the truck and looking for their treats. That was a wonderful experience. We had a cow that kind of a cookie, was her name, and she was our favorite, and she picked up a milk fever. At that time we didn't know how to cure it. I learned after give an injection of calcium into the cow's vein, and they recover right there. But anyways, this cow was lying down, pretty well dying right there, So I sat down beside her. She put her head in my lap. And she looked at me in the eyes and she died right there. That was kind of a touching scene there happening, that the cow had the comfort. She really had the feelings that put her head in my lap and died there, Talking about cows, we had for a couple of years cows with horns. Of course, the bull calves had horns, and they weren't accepted on the market. So after the horns were grown, we had to dehorn them. Part I never did like it, but cut the horns off of the cow. But to do it, you had to knock the cow down to be able. I'd grab the cow by the horn, I'd give her a flip, and she'd fall right over. And then once your cow was lying down, you got her horn dug into the ground, and you can control the animal then, you know. So I felt kind of proud I was able to throw a big cow, a big steer, just by flipping by the horns, you know. So I did enjoy also taking the cattle to the pasture. And I had a couple of 2 smart cows. Once I opened the gate to head them out of the yard, they were there the year before in the pasture. They knew what was up. So they just take it off down the road and ran, literally ran, all the way to the pasture, the 12-mile move. We moved them there. Summertime came and fall. I had to move them home. And the pasture was getting a little bit low. So the cattle, they just didn't have enough to eat. I had to bring them home to feed them. So I opened the gate there, and there's 2 smart cows again. They knew they were heading for home. They just went through the gate, hit the road, and on the run, literally on the run, all the way home. I happened to be moving the cattle on a Saturday, which was a kind of a poor day because of the traffic on the highway. And the cattle I tried to keep them in the pasture, but they wanted to stay on the highway, on the center line. So I had a whole string of cows running on the center line down the highway. I just couldn't do a thing to get them off the line. So here comes the police car. He said, you know what, you shouldn't have your cattle on the highway. I said, I know I shouldn't. What am I going to do with them? They want to stay in the middle of the highway and I can't do a thing about it. I said, you have to get them off. I said, you know what, turn the siren on. And try and push them over. Not a thing he could do with them. He drove along, turned the siren on and off, and they just kept their own pace. He said, I think you better hurry home as quick as you could and get them off the highway. So I did. And get them off. And those cows, knowing the location was of the yard, instead of going down the road and then down the road, they hightailed it across the field and straight for the farm. Also quit cattle for another reason, that too much fencing was involved there. I spent so much time pounding those fence posts, keeping the fence upgraded. And one particular instance, my cattle had got out into neighbor's field, and he had come over and told me, hey, your cattle got into my crop. What are we going to do about it? I said, let's go, we'll take a look. We drove down, I said, yeah, they did damage. How much do you think they caused damage? Tell me the number. And whatever the number was, it wasn't actually really too much, but $100. He said $100. Well, I thought to myself, that's ridiculous. That's more damage than that, you know. So I paid him $200 for it. He was pretty happy about it. But then, 2 days after, those dumb cattle, which they weren't that dumb, but we got out again and caused some more damage. I was at a breaking point to make a decision to sell the cattle or not. I said, we are selling it. I phoned down to Walter Williams, and Dick was the fellow I dealt with. He says, Dick, how many semis, cattle liners, well, we need to load 100 head. Well, I say two should do it. I say send them out tomorrow. In the meantime, I had rounded up the cattle, put them into the corral I had on the pasture, and the truck arrived the next day. I loaded the whole works except 10 calves. I thought I'd keep them just for meat purposes or whatever it is, which we sold after. But the prices were so low at that time, I couldn't see my way feeding them some more. And the future was so uncertain for the cattle price. So I hauled the cattle out, and it was a relief for me. It's a kind of heartbreaking in a way to part with the cattle, and yet to come to a point of a radical decision that I better do something for my own health.
Yeah, and we also thankful to the Lord for being with us in time of our problems, our disagreements, but He's there to set things straighter for us, because there are times we say things that are maybe not exactly the best, encouraging to each other, whatever it might be, without meaning to be mean or anything, but the words come out. But the thing is not to take those things seriously, but to know that we can apologize to each other and say that God is still with us. He still forgives us, even for that little bit of disagreement that we might have had. For, like, I know some of you like to think of the story that we said before about being in a field. I was learning how to swath. Being a swather, if whoever knows what a swather is, but it's cutting grain with a machine. So Jetta or Bill, for you Jetta, for me Bill, was trying to teach me how to run the swather. And he's teaching, and I'm trying to learn so hard. I want to do it. I want to learn. And he's saying, do this, and do this. I says, let me try myself. I'm going to try. Okay, go a little faster. I say, I want to learn a little bit first before I go any faster. Well, you could go a little faster, or whatever else. I said, do you want me to drive, or don't you want me to drive? Yes, I want you to learn to drive. Okay, so again I've tried to, and he's telling me again, that's maybe you can step on it and you'll know how to drive faster. I says, I know I will. And I says, okay, I think I'm getting all mixed up. I don't want to do this anymore. I said, you do for a while, I'm gone. So I got off the swather and I went home for about a quarter mile, maybe a little more. And he went back to his combining, and the swather is standing. So I looked at it, and I looked at it, and I thought, I'm going back. I know how to start it, I know how to run it, and there'll be nobody bothering me. So I went there, and I started it, and I started working it slowly but surely, and then a little sped up a little bit, and then I knew how to. And here I see him walking up to me, and coming to the swather, wondering what's going on here. I says, I know how to run this. You sure do. Thank you very much. So, so that was a little disagreement, which all turned out well. Everything went fine after in our harvesting at that time. Just that little bit of frustration that comes to life with anything, no matter where you are, not to make it go too far, too serious, just is our motto, that don't let things get down on you that you're going to be mad at each other for a day or two or three. Never. Just for a while, and that's it, and it's gone. So I hope you take that as encouragement for each of the other, whoever is living life together for many years, and whoever is growing up, and all these things, that love is forever, and God loves us forever, and we love each other forever, and love never fails. So let's just be nice to each other all the time. Thank you.
Dad retired and decided to retire. So I took over the farming. And once I farmed, Dad had no more income from the farm that came over to us. Because I was farming at that time. So the money started coming in, not by the thousands, but the hundreds, and we managed to save quite nicely. That was a time later on in life where I made some poor decisions. I think it was, I had a chance to buy some land. Well, his friends came over and said, "You want to buy some land?" Well, I just didn't, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to keep on farming. I said, "No, I don't think I'll buy it." And it was just a ridiculously low price. And that's where I made a mistake. I could have bought money already. My security in the bank had established itself. I had no problem to buy anything. But anyways, I still hesitated in buying that farm, and I lost it. But, and we had worked up enough land at that time. We had a very decent living and a lot of work that went into it. So slowly but surely I bought some equipment, and if I had the money, I bought it. And if I didn't have the money, I didn't buy it. And later on, I had farmed enough land that I was running short of a time schedule. I farmed the land so far away from each other. Well, from one farm, I had to move 24 miles to farm it, and then back to my hometown, and then back to another land. So I come to a point where I was living like a gypsy. Seldom stayed home anymore. I left early in the morning. The children never saw me, sometimes for a week. Ernie and Sharon, their mom looked after them, looked after the farm, milking cows and looking after the garden. And I was always on the road with the hired men. And I got tired of that. I didn't want any more land and keep up with this and that routine of being away from home all the time. But we made a nice, comfortable living what we had already. We have people that came from Blaine Lake. They turned out to be top lawyers, top doctors, top teachers. It's how you assess your management of your education that you acquire. You can acquire education as a teacher, and you have to love it. You have to, not just because it's a job or any other profession. Profession as a farmer is also something you've got to have faith in it, that next year will be better. Farmers have farmed for 40, 50 years before they finally realize the accumulation of property that they can afford to live properly, nicely, richly, But that's, again, assessing your education and putting it forward to a good use and loving what you're doing. That's what you gotta do. Because some people, well, I don't like this job, I don't like that job. Mind you, in their chase for something better to work, they will find maybe what they want to do. Otherwise, they're not happy. Inwardly, they're not happy because they're not accomplishing what their natural ability is supposed to do. A teacher is never a good teacher until he puts his heart into it. He's got to be a good teacher, a loving teacher, a caring teacher for the future generations of children that are under your wing, well, literally speaking, under his management. The skills you invest into them, the attitude you teach the kids, that's also. And mechanically also, if you don't know how to fix anything at all in a farmer, don't be a farmer. Because there's always something to fix. You have to have a natural ability to a certain extent to assess a project, a thing that you have to fix, and you can tackle it down and do it. Say, hey, I'm fixing something that nobody else wants, and I fixed it up, and it's working. Just the accomplishment, just like fixing up an old car. You spend hours and hours fixing your car. If you have to assess the hours they put in plus the money, it's just not a worthwhile project, but it's something that a person loves to do. And same thing with your work. You've got to love to have, you've got to have a passion for it. We had a friend from, actually, Baba's cousin from Moscow. And I had told him something like this, the same story. And he couldn't believe it, that a person could do that much, go that much green and handle it in a lifetime. How much could a person do that, you know? And I told him that story. He said, I never believed that, how hard you people work here. See, in the back in Russia, they had a different story. If you prove yourself too good, too successful, you won't last long. Somebody will get rid of you. Because you are setting your day, they have been, trained or brainwashed to work as little as possible by the government and achieving as little as possible. Out here, he says, you people don't know what you are doing here, how hard you are working. He says that you in particular, he pointed at me, said, you would have never survived there with your attitude towards farming. Says, somebody was taking you behind the barn and shoot you. But putting out the fire out in the field, I was driving with a tractor, trying to put the fire out, and I ran into a ditch with the tractor, a ditch that I never knew existed there. And of course it threw me with such sudden force in the cab that I injured my hip. The pin that was put in my hip, it snapped on me. So I was due for another surgery. That was surgery number 3. Well, the doctor, after I saw him, he said, what are you doing here? I told you not to farm. I said, what am I going to do with myself? And I like farming. Liking farming, just being outside, working with creation, just working in the field. When you put that seed in the ground, hopefully someday it's going to sprout and grow and produce. Who gave it the seed the power to come up and produce its own kind? As a wheat kernel will not turn into a radish or something like that, you know. It is also pre-planned by God. All this, the nature around us. When you look around the sky, the wild storms that we have, so there is incredible output of some creational work, somebody that's created all this around the soil, the rain, and gave the man the power to be able to handle it, to be able to master it and do something about it. That's also like about farming. Just dealing with, a lot of times, dealing with people. I used to haul grain to the elevator, and I enjoyed that part, just meeting up with different farmers. They were just like a family after a while, after a year or two. Each one just like a part of a family to you, know, because all the same ones keep coming to that elevator. Now that part is gone forever. Farmers haul grain to Bigger, to Saskatchewan, to North Battleford. No more contact, a personal contact with anybody. So that's the friendship part. Yes, my main enjoyment in farming was working with nature. Nature is God. And again, mechanical work, you've got to be able to assess the problem and fix it. It's a kind of a natural thing. You can see something and analyze it. Somebody else will walk by and never see what I had. Farmers working for me, you know. He looks for problems for me to fix so it doesn't break down anymore. Now you take even Ernie there. Say, Dad, how could you see all those problems? You just walk by past the cultivator and you know there's something wrong with that. Just the way the tractor sounds and you know what's wrong with that. I see it's just something you learn by observing and studying it and trying to analyze it and be able to fix it. If you have to go and fix every little thing that goes haywire on the farm, you'd prefer living in a garage or the workshop forever or the repair store. I mean, it involves a lot of insight into each thing you do. But you've got to love to handle the hassle that goes with farming. Something you don't like, doing some things. There are times my worst experiences with farming when I started battling the insects and the natural forces that are there also working against you.
So what were some other things you didn't like about farming? What are some of the hard things?
The work part. I don't because there's some, no matter what, but there are things you just don't like to do it. But you have to. Take at one time, we combined, no cabs on a combine, no cabs on a tractor, and here you are, sitting on that implement, howling wind, howling storms or dust, and you have to put up with it. That is something nobody would like to work in those conditions unless you see the end result that will prove something for you. You have to pretty well sit down, make a list, 1, 2, up to 10, what you liked. When you start writing on the other side, you don't like it. They start crossing each other, you know. You like it, but you don't like it. I didn't like cattle because work involved with them hauling bales. Fixing the fences. But I like the part to be with cattle. I like that part. You start looking at herd of cattle and you say, hey, that's mine. That's mine because I produced this. I'm looking after them. They're in my care, actually. If I don't look after them, what happens? You have to love a certain portion of it because it's an animal that doesn't know any better. It depends on you, and you look after it. No, that's what it is. Lots more to talk about, but I'm tired.
When Gedda or Bill was doing all the land work and everything at different places, and he had to go here and there and everywhere, and then he got rid of some of that land that was left that he had to work so he could be closer to home. And then I decided, well, it wasn't even a decided thing, it just kind of went naturally that I would help out there too in the field. So I did, especially later on a few years after, when I was able to drive the truck in the field, and I was able to drive the tractor here and there, wherever, but not as much tractor as when we had combining to do. I used to love to do the combining a lot of times, and that was my joy, to be out there in the field, working together in the fields with combining, hauling grain, putting it in the granary, and all those things, which was all a joy to me, not the way I used to think when I was a teenager that I don't want to be a farmer's wife. I enjoyed it now very, very much. And I thank God that God led me in that direction to marry this particular farmer.
Well, we were coming home from the city, and I often did wonder before, along the way, how much grain have I shipped in my days of farming? Yes. Year to year, and I kind of, so many railroad cars that I filled in my lifetime. And anyway, we're across standing at this rail track, the train was passing by, and I started counting the cars. They're all green cars passing by. I counted over 100. How many do you remember? 120 or something like that. I told Bubba, see, you know what? I just realized that all the cars that went by in my lifetime, I would have filled every one of them. And all those years, it was heavy work. Now they have greenbacks and hopper bins and all kinds of, helps along in the farming. That time it was just hard work, shoveling, loading up, shoveling. It was just, but in my lifetime, that's why I filled about 120 real cars. And that's, I just see blood, sweat, and tears. Because tears went into it. Farming, the good years and the bad years were the tears. There were some very bad years. And some were enjoyable years. And yet when you put the three of them
Just meant, where am I? I mean, where was I?
And you're just kind of just pretty close here to the Circle Drive Alliance Church. There's these housing complex.
Oh, that's where I am.
Yeah, southern. It's kind of in the south part of Saskatoon.
Yeah, okay, that's where I am. Physically, where am I mentally?
Look great.
well, thank you. How's Mikey here? Is it good, nice and curly?
Oh, fantastic.
Well, don't make fun. I feel more confident when I've got a wave in my hair
Yeah, your hair
than
looks
standing like that.
Getting to the point where there is no hair, so no wave.
I put a wave in there this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, why?
Sarah Lee, if you wanted to smile like that, you could.
Yeah, okay. You got it running?
Here, let me get it.
Can I talk with my hands too? Or just
Oh yeah,
my-
you should talk with your hands. If you normally do. No, it was funny. When I married Genevieve, you know how her family's part Italian, hey? So she talks with her hands a lot.
Oh,
I
is
was
that-
like, wow, Genevieve talks with her hands a lot, she's usually talking like that. But then I didn't know that I talked with my hands at all. And then I watched a couple of videos of me preaching, and I'm always talking like this, I'm always moving my hands around and stuff, and I never even realized it.
You have to tone down a bit.
Yeah,
Eh?
so I realized, I thought Genevieve talked a lot with her hands, but I talk with my hands way more.
Yeah, some people talk loud with their hands,
They talk loud with
Yeah.
their hands, yeah. Right.
That's our business.
Oh, you don't have to tell everything, but say some,
Well, everything is not.
It's nice because your marriage is a testimony in and of itself. I
Oh,
mean, how many years have you been married now for?
63.
63, see? So, I mean, it is your business, but on the other hand, just for your great-grandchildren to be able to say, my great-grandparents were married for over 63 years.
And they were still in love and wanting to be together, don't want to be separated in any way.
No, maybe that's for next year we'll resume our interview.
Nice timing.
Who wants to listen for 2 or 3 hours?
Oh, people will. Like, your great-grandkids, they will. Because kids grow up often in our culture and they don't feel connected. They don't know their family history. And that's sad. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen in our family. I I want your great grandchildren to know our family history and to feel rooted. It's important.
Someday you might hear, someday the film will be old and be put away on the shelf and nobody will know about it.
Oh no. Those are the kind of stories, I know Tears is going to want to hear about when she gets a little older, and our other children, or Kevin and Annie's kids, or Colin and Hannah's kids, and Christopher and whoever he's going to marry, their kids. Maybe Christopher and whoever he's going to marry, their kids won't even get to know you personally, but if they have stories like that, then it's like they get to know you. That's very valuable, I think. Kind of thinking like long term, hey?
That's right, yes.
Thinking generationally.
Kicking, screaming, I like that.
Every step of the way.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, my voice isn't exactly the best either.
You sound like your grandma. But that's good.
That's good?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
It's a good effect.
Yeah, I'm 87 years old. That's old. Right?